Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of The Curse of the Collector, because we do this show because the curse is absolutely real, ladies and gentlemen. And joining me, as always, here, we've got from the great state of Texas, Mr. Scott Berry, all the way up from Canada, Armando Venditti, from
Hello.
Ohio, Mr. Jamie Laszlo, and it's probably mid-afternoon for him, but he's always available when we need him. From Scotland, David Gallagher. And
David's always awake.
always
Or what
awake.
time
Yeah,
you
that's your
text,
middle name,
he
David. David,
replies.
always awake Gallagher.
3 a.m., 3
I
p.m.
did sleep once in the 90s. It was rather enjoyable. So,
Well, when you were in your mother's womb?
Yeah.
I was born in 85. I'm just wearing
Okay, all right. So I'm a little bit off.
Hey, David, if you
Yeah.
can do old jokes, we can do young jokes.
True enough. True enough.
37's young these days. I'm very happy with that.
You guys, before we get started, you guys want to hear a really funny thing? So yesterday,
Sure.
this was a hilarious story. So yesterday, my grandson is here with us for the week, and he's going to be 7. And we went out for lunch for pizza, right? So I go and I order him a slice of pepperoni pizza because he loves pepperoni pizza, and I get a slice of mushroom and a slice of sausage, right? So the young girl who's working the counter, probably like she's maybe in her late teens, maybe she's early 20s. I don't know. She's young. And so when she finally comes over with the pizza, she's got 2 slices on one plate, one on another. She puts the pepperoni in front of him and puts the other 2 in front of me. And she goes, I hope I got those combinations right. And I goes, oh, yeah, he loves pepperoni. That's his. She goes, yeah, I figured as much because only old people order mushroom pizza.
Ooh, really? Holy shit.
Really now?
Wow.
I was
Okay.
like, wow.
Oh,
Righty then.
it's like,
Boy, didn't
hope
even beat
you
around
enjoy,
the bush,
hope you
just said
enjoy
old
0
people.
tips.
I've been liking mushroom my whole life, though. It's not like I turned 50 and said, well, it's time for mushroom.
Same here. I guess kids of today don't eat mushrooms.
Exactly.
But people
Oh,
say
they
the
eat
most
mushrooms,
stupid
Pete.
things.
Yeah.
It's like, like at a certain
Yeah.
age,
Not
you
on
gotta
their
start
pizza.
enjoying certain things, right? It's like only old people like mushroom. Like, come on.
I guess, yeah. I was like,
It's
holy
ridiculous.
cow, man. It's like, woo.
Stupid.
It's like, come on, it's mushrooms, not sitting watching QVC all day, for Christ's sake.
I know, right?
Yeah.
No, it's
Anyway, now that we got the food tale out of the way, so as always, since last we met here, we have acquired some things, and we've each have picked out 2 things to discuss today and show off. This is the show and tell show on the channel, and we're going to start. Let's see, we're going to start with Davey, work our way around. We'll go Davey, Armando, Jamie, Scott, and myself. So, Mr. Gallagher, what have you got to show us off here? Our first trip round the clock.
Okay, well, this is incredibly self-indulgent, just to mention at the start. But if you can't be self-indulgent, then you can't be indulgent about anything else. The guys have already seen it, but in the latest Neil Young issue of Record Collector magazine, on racks of all good newsagents now, as well as some terrible newsagents probably. The Neil Young issue that just came out 2 weeks ago, there's a 2-page spread all about me. Never mind Neil Young, it's all about me. Yes. So yeah, well, to be fair, it's about me talking about Neil Young, but there you go. So yeah, that is the positive side of being the curse of a collector. It's literally about my Neil Young collection. So yeah, that was a more positive aspect to come
So,
from.
Davey,
tell
us a little bit how that actually happened. How did you?
Yeah. So I get Neil Young promo sent to me for certain releases. And that just happened because I made a video that got a good few thousand hits on very early in my YouTube days on his latest album, Barn, at the time, latest album. You know, it's Neil Young, so he'll have a new one out by the time we end this sentence. So the people at Neil Young Archives said, can we send you a couple of promo things? Then, you know, because they're trying to kind of diversify who talks about it, and so if they can try and get some people that have X and X audience, some people that have Y and Y, and blah blah blah. So they were then contacted with by Record Collector magazine with a, can you recommend some people to talk about Neil Young and who actually have physical media, which rarer than you think these days. People actually have, you know, like the full discography on all sorts of formats, as well as the kind of miscellany and geekery that you want to be able to go into on this kind of specialist thing, because you don't want to just talk the albums, because everybody's got them if they're buying a Neil Young magazine. So I was asked, can you contribute a photograph of you with the whole Neil Young collection? And I said, no. If you want that to be done, it would have to be done from space. Neil Young has 384,000 releases. There's absolutely no way one photograph would ever, because they wanted it done face on. I said, if you want the album covers facing out, then vinyl alone is going to take up 20 pages. There's just no way that it can be done reasonably without losing all sorts of resolution. And if it's just going to be spines, then what's the point in that? It's a very boring picture. So we eventually kind of went back and forth and kind of auction style almost debated on how we do the format. And eventually I said, look, I'll just do spreads like that. Where there's a kind of, so on that one, for example, there's all sorts from vinyl to DVD audio of On the Beach, to the graphic novel that he wrote for Greendale's concept album, to Living with War, the second version, which is without the overdubs, to the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young 74 Blu-ray audio box set. And then over there, for example, is just one with CDs, which would be the easiest way to do the discography. There's one with the box sets with the big archive releases and things. There's one which is just me with a ticket. That's from the Tonight's the Night tour from 1973. And that was kind of just a bit of an oddity to add in because it's from the Glasgow Apollo. And the support act in 1973 were a young band called the Eagles. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Really?
I don't know whatever happened to them. So yeah, 1973. And then Tonight's the Night wouldn't come out for another 2 years. That's so right. People, I mean, he was booed off every night in that tour because it was such a weird, strung out tour. And then people must have wondered when On the Beach came out, this isn't the album that we saw him do live anyway, what's going on here? And then 2 years later, they finally get to hear it. So I mean, this was only half the photos that I took. So I mean, there was, because I said, look, you're going to have to pick and choose because even that would be a 2-page spread just for photos of the collection. So they cut out like the Buffalo Springfield stuff and most of the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. So I said, look, it's your magazine. I can't really tell you how to edit it down. But the guy was really happy with their back and forth. And instead of just being a few pictures, he said, well, can we turn it into an actual interview then? So from there, it kind of went on to become a double-page spread of me talking literally my history with Neil Young. And he's asking, for example, about elusive gems in the collection. How many items do you have? Is there a particular format that you prefer? And then the basics, can you pick your favorite Neil Young album, which is On the Beach, songs, things, most cherished items, particular eras that you're fond for, which especially with Neil, he does have very distinctive eras. So yeah, this was an incredibly self-indulgent pick, but just one of the coolest things that comes out of all I've done is make a few videos of me going, here's a Neil Young album, it's just out and I really like it, it's pretty awesome. And then all of a sudden you're getting emailed to be in magazines about Neil. It's kind of bizarre. So you're in the kind of meta way, you're in your own collection all of a sudden, because I would have bought this on the racks. And it's got some interviews with contemporaries and things. I have a page more than Stephen Stills does. Stills only gets one page.
Yeah, you're moving up there.
I don't think he's too important to the story, but obviously I'm twice as important. Judy Collins only has a half page. But yeah, I mean, joking aside, I mean, it goes through the major discography. It does kind of jump in the 2010s and things. It starts to just do the maybe 3 at a time rather than, because if you did the full discography, Zuma, with the Cortez the Killer, which I'm wearing the t-shirt of, and the pictures, if you noticed, that I showed there. Somebody pointed out probably wouldn't go down well in South America if they saw those pictures, and I'm sitting with a Cortez What a Killer t-shirt. But yeah, regardless, he was dancing across the water. So yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic read. Anyway, I mean, it goes into depth about the Stills Young band even. So the only thing is, I kind of wish that, and not to be too, again, self-promoting, although fucking why not? I kind of wish, and this kind of pushed me onto it, that, hey, Neil Young fans don't really need to be told how great Zuma is, how great Rust Never Sleeps says, and, you know, or how divisive trans is, for example, or the Geffen era in general. So I thought they're skipping through the 2010s scattershot. So I thought, yeah, I think that's kind of pushed me on to something that I've always had in the back of my mind, to do a Neil Young series, like literally a full discography, which would take years to do. I thought, it would be fun to do that, because then it can shine a light on things that, again, even a Neil Young collector's magazine are just taken for granted.
A multi-part series, you know?
Yeah, literally, I think every studio album individually, every archive release, and, you know, almost like every time I just do one of my own videos, just take a Neil Young episode alongside it, maybe something like that, and just have, you know, not long ones, maybe 5 minutes of video or something, but starting at 5 minutes, they usually turn into 15 minutes once you get things out of the way. But because this kind of pushed me on, because I mean, we're near the end of the magazine here, and we're still on Ragged Glory, for example.
And that's, you know, 30 years ago already.
You know, so it really ends with Mirrorball is the last one that gets a double page spread, for example, and that's 1995 with Pearl Jam. Although the next archive release that's coming out is from that tour, Neil Young and Pearl Jam live in Dublin 1996. So looking forward to that. So yeah, that kind of, it was a cool thing to happen. It's a cool thing that's kind of spurred me on to do more, because I thought, this isn't the full story, even though it's still a full magazine about Neil Young. It would need to be an actual book or a series, a long series of videos to tell the full in-depth story, because albums like Psychedelic Pill, Americana, anything in the last decade are really just rushed over in this issue. And this is 180 odd pages, so, you know, you have to, I think that these albums, even if they're not the best, I think they do deserve to be, you know, if you're going to hold up the Geffen years as a double page spread, I don't think there's any reason why Psychedelic Pill or Lenoise can't get a double page spread, metaphorical, on video. So yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of starting that. I'm just kind of working on a format and how I'm going to do it, but it'll be a long gestating project, but I'm kind of looking forward to working on it. And then it goes, you know, even the adverts are all very relative. I mean, it's quite funny. Jamie, you mentioned to me when I was wearing my CSNY t-shirt last month, you'd never seen the "and" added. And here's a new book out that also uses the "and," so that seems to be the way they're doing it. These days, rather than just CSNY, it's always including the "and" these days. But Henry Dillitz has got a new book of his photography out, for example. He took all the album covers and all the great pictures there, the CSN, CSNY. So yeah, it's just a really cool read for a Neil Young fan. You know, obviously goes into, there's the Harvest 50th box set most of us have, and then a full discography, which, as you can imagine, just alone for his UK discography takes up 6 full pages. Yeah, just listing discography and values and things, because it is record collector, but it goes into all sorts of detail on that. You know, if you've got the lyric insert, you might get another £5 for your version of Zuma, that kind of thing. So, you know, impossibly geeky, but again, record collector kind of implies that it's not aimed at the casual man in the street. So yeah, so self-indulgent, but I don't know, I thought it was too cool for school not to mention that this is the kind of stuff that can happen when all you're doing is just being a fan yourself. Well,
it brings up. I'm kind of glad you showed that, because it brings up an interesting question that I'll have for the rest of the panel here. So for Armando, Jamie, I think I know your answer, and Scott, if you were to fall into a situation like Davey did, where you are a huge fan of a artist or band, and you have pretty much everything they've ever done, and you're real passionate about them, and you had the opportunity to be interviewed and have some pictures taken in a magazine like that dedicated to that band or artist, Armando, who would that artist be?
Queen.
I guess that one right too. Jamie, I know what your answer is, but go ahead.
When David was talking, I was already picturing how I would do my picture. I would be drowning in it. I'd have it all like on a floor, and it would be like a blanket kind of like over me, with me peeking behind one of maybe the albums or something.
Yeah, I haven't gone that far yet, but yeah, that's
Pat Benatar though, right?
Oh yes, I'm sorry to anyone who doesn't know.
Yeah, it's funny that Jamie even took it as read.
I thought it was implied. Yeah.
Scott, how about you?
There's several I would say are in the running, but up the top of my head, I'm thinking it's probably going to be either Miles Davis or Frank Zappa.
I know you guys well. I picked everybody's correctly, huh?
Would
no
yours
kidding.
be Sabbath or Deep Purple, Pete?
I mean,
Although
anyone who
both of them,
knows me knows I
there's
like
still a lot of
Queen,
stuff I'm
so,
missing.
For
right?
me, I would think based on the amount of stuff that I have, probably would be Deep Purple. I mean,
Because you have more.
Yeah, I could see that.
Shitload of live stuff. I have all the studio stuff. I've got books, and also, yeah, it would probably be Deep Purple for me.
There's a lot more. Deep
I would have
Purple than
said for
Sabbath.
you either Deep Purple or Black Sabbath.
Yeah, those would, either one would probably be a good choice. The only thing, the issue with Sabbath is they have a lot less studio albums and a lot less live albums. I mean, it's not as prolific. I mean, Purple has got a shit ton of live albums, and I'm probably even missing a couple here and there. But yeah, but none of these. Well, you know, Zappa and Miles Davis are probably comparable to Neil Young, I would think. On the
Definitely.
Tons of stuff.
Because that was kind of the issue, is that if you do it just with the studio albums, that's not telling a particularly interesting story, because again, any Neil Young fan is going to, you know, they don't really need to be told that Harvest and Gold Rush are probably quite essential albums. So they were obviously looking for people that did have more miscellany, and, you know, so people that did have the graphic novel of Greendale and things. But so you need that kind of bizarre, almost OCD like collection where you know, to get the dance remix of Mr. Soul, you buy the Sample and Hold B-side from Trans, the single. So it's kind of like Zappa, for example. You wouldn't just have the Ryko disc CDs, which you'd want to have like the Halloween box set with the big mask that came out a few years. You'd want to have pictures of those kind of things. So it's almost catch-22. You need to be a massive fan, but almost beyond that, a little bit obsessive in a.
You need to have the curse.
In a good kind of a way, though.
Yes, you need.
Gotta have the curse.
Yeah,
funny,
obsessive in a bad way, Armando. I've been stalking him for years.
And to be honest, I mean, I went on a bit of a Neil Young kick at like a few years back. We took a trip to Calgary, and we stopped by this record store, and I just started buying Neil Young stuff, like you know. Somewhere in the basement, but I mean, I just started buying certain stuff, like not in order of release, just, oh, this looks good. This looks
kind of hard to do that.
Stuff like that. Like I have Psychedelic Pill and stuff like that, right? So I mean, that's cool. That's a cool spread.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which and Psychedelic Pill to me deserves. That is to me the last classic Crazy Horse album, because he's still using Crazy Horse, but it's Niels Lofgren who's back in the band, so they're a much more advanced band, because Niels is a master guitar player, whereas when Poncho was in the band, they were ragged as hell, and they were, you know, but they were Crazy Horse. So it's a very different lineup now. They've kind of gone back to a more slightly country tinged Crazy Horse, which they kind of started out with Danny Whitten as the leader of the band anyway. But yeah, there was that whole 40 years of Poncho being the leader, where Crazy Horse were always synonymous with if Neil wants to make a totally out there rock record, he would just go back to the horse and do, you know, the Ragged Glory and Arc and Weld and, you know, those kind of records.
In other words, every 5 or so years. I'll call you in about 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. Whenever he finds himself in the middle of the road, he heads back to the ditch, to use his own metaphor. Right. Yeah. So when he has a Harvest Moon and people go, "Oh, Neil's back," he goes, "Yeah, I'm away again," and brings out Sleeps Like Angels. You know. Yeah, you can't keep track on him. He's always finding something else to do.
To be fair, though, he releases albums, you know, like so
like some people change underwear.
Yeah, pretty much. I didn't want to go there, but yeah, we can do that too. You know, he releases albums so quickly that it's like, okay, what's coming out now? Like, where do I start collecting? It's like,
he has, and again, some of it's not been announced, but 15 albums scheduled to come out this year from the archive releases.
Sweet Jesus!
So one of them is from the bootleg series. I posted the cover of it online last week. I was allowed to do that because that's coming out very soon. That's coming out in April. From 73 actually tonight's night.
The rainbow one, right?
Yeah, which they're not too. They'll let them leak because they intentionally use the old bootlegs and steal the bootleggers' covers, which is quite nice. They bootleg the bootleggers, which I like. Places are there's Archives 3 is getting released this year, the big massive box that's $300 on release. That's coming out this year, and yeah, it will never end. Pete, for example, your box set that you got of Neil Young, the album collection, remember it was missing all those numbers in the middle?
Yeah.
It was missing that, the Geffen years. He's now got the rights back, and he's bringing out the Geffen years box.
Of course he is.
Oh, wow.
So those numbers will be filled.
All
in
the
your
gaps will
gap.
now be, exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, that was far too much Neil Young talk.
Yeah, we could do the whole hour on Neil Young at this point. All right, Armando, you're up.
Hello. Okay. Good morning.
Hello.
Okay. Good morning, guys. Okay. Bob's going to be helping me on my first choice.
Meanwhile, Bob's been waiting patiently for like 25 minutes.
He's sort of been like nodding off a little. It's like, oh my God, it's like, I'm nudging him. You awake? So my first choice is we've been talking to Young for so long, I'll be like, what the hell? Jan Akkerman. Okay. Jazz fusion guitarist, multi-instrumentalist from the Dutch band Focus. I have here, I'm going to turn the camera here just a bit. I have here the complete Jan Akkerman collection released on Red Bullet Music, I believe it is. It's a 26 CD set. We're going to turn it over and we're going to show you as best as we can the albums in this collection. It spans from 1968, his release of Talent for Sale, and it goes up to 2011's Minor Details. Okay. All right. Thank you, Bob. I also have, I'm going to show here quick. Now that I've got to grab it, it's falling here. Bob, if you can just help me grab this CD here. I also have, I was watching a review that you did, Pete, 3 years ago on his latest album.
That's quite good, yeah.
From Close Beauty.
Yeah.
If you can see the artwork on this, it is a
killer artwork on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Sorry.
No, it's just I've got it on gallery view, so it's hard to. Yeah.
Okay. Jan Akkerman, excuse me, my voice cracked up. Jan Akkerman is what I consider to be a prolific, or was a prolific musician when he was releasing his stuff. His catalog, like he was with Focus from 69 to 78, and he was releasing solo albums while he was with Focus, and he goes from jazz fusion to progressive rock to Baroque instrument, like acoustic instrumental stuff. Most of the albums are instrumental, right? But every album is different. Every single album is different. So whatever style that you're looking for, it's there. And there are times when he would release 2 albums in a year. Like, so whatever style that you want to listen to, it's in this set. If you want like a progressive, listen to Profile. If you want acoustic sort of minstrel, listen to Tabernacle. Like every album is different, right? And basically it's him on drums, keyboards, guitars, whatever, he basically does it all with basically with extra people on. Sorry guys, it's just, I think I'm having a bit of an attack here.
Oh.
My heart's racing here. Sorry, I apologize. Okay,
take your time.
But what I like about him, again, is every single album is different. Whatever you want within the collection, whatever you want to listen to, it's there. There's one album he does called Passion, and it's all acoustic guitar, just him on guitar, and it's very intricate pieces. Sorry, again. This is not good.
You need to take a break, Armando?
No, I'm fine. I don't know why I'm doing this.
Yeah,
I
you're doing fine, buddy. If you need to.
Yes, absolutely.
um the the reason why I came across this collection was that it came up on my Amazon search, right? And I've known of this gentleman for about a year, right? And I remember asking people on Facebook, this collection, is it worth getting? Is it worth buying? And I believe, Pete, you said, well, if you really want it, go for it, but I wouldn't do it. I just decided to take a chance, and I'm glad I did.
You can get it for a reasonable amount of money. I mean, most of that stuff is probably like long out of print. So if you can get it all in one shot, that's the way to do it.
I'm sure the vinyl ain't cheap, original pressings and
Yeah.
stuff. So you
Sure
can
it
get it
is.
all in one box set.
The thing is, well, price-wise, I mean, I've been watching this thing for about a year. Okay, I'm doing better now. I'm sorry, guys. I am so sorry.
You reeled it in.
The set itself, it goes for about 149 on Amazon. So you get 26 albums. You get his entire recorded history, and he recorded for different labels, like for Atlantic, Polydor, CBS, Sony, Vertigo. But he went basically from label to label. Like he would sign these one album deals, and it would, he would just go. He basically did whatever the hell he wanted to do musically. He never pigeonholed himself.
And that's why he was on so many labels, because they always expected something. They always
and he basically packed house and packed up and moved, right? Like they're like,
well, you're the guitarist to Focus, so you should put out a solo album that kind of sounds like Focus. He's like, well, I just want to record an album on the entire album is on the loop, right? And that's just what I want to do. I mean, because he didn't care. He just did what he wanted to do. And I'm in shock that he had that many solo albums. I had no idea it was that many. It's like, woof.
Yeah, no, the albums are fantastic. It was a gamble, and it paid off for me.
That's all that matters.
I remember, and there's 26 albums in this set. I've listened to like 16 of them in the week. So it was like it's a lot of music to digest, sonically digest and take in, and and sort of, okay, where does this fit? And I remember you were saying, Pete, that you were during the COVID lockdown, that you were listening a lot to Pat Metheny, and that sort of got you through, the doldrums of being in lockdown and stuff. Jan Akkerman has the same effect on me, right? So I think he's a fantastic artist. I think he's overlooked to an extent by a lot of people. And ladies and gentlemen, aside from my episode just now, please listen to me. If you want to get into something different and out there, avant-garde, just something that's out of your comfort zone, invest in this set. You will love it. I promise you.
Yeah, I've been saying for years that Jan Akkerman is probably one of the unsung guitar heroes of the 70s.
Yeah,
sure. And a box set like that shows you that he continued on all throughout, all these decades.
Yeah, I will say the weakest moments are for me during his 80s period, because he starts to use the Linn drums, the programming drums, the guitar synthesizers, and
as many did in the 80s.
He falls into the 80s tropes, and that and the vocals. There's some music that does not need vocals. Like it doesn't work. So, but other than that, and he got out of that like in the 90s and the 2000s. But other than that, this is a fantastic collection. So if anybody wants to invest, and it's pretty much a good bang for your buck,
And Armando, are those all like little, like the mini cardboard CD replica sleeves, like for all those?
Yeah. Bob's gonna open the box, and
is he still with us?
Yeah.
Bob's still here.
No, not Bob.
Jan Akkerman.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, Jan Akkerman. No, he's still around.
I know we've been going for a while, but geez, Louise.
Bob too.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'll just show you. Quickly. Upload them. Hold on. There's going to be a major edit on this show, folks, before it goes to air. But basically, you have a booklet of all the information, and yeah, the albums are basically the album replicas. The CDs are the album replicas.
Okay, cool.
Right.
Yeah,
You have
profile is so good. Oh, so good.
Tabernacle.
You have to do that, or the box set would be so.
Yeah.
So huge,
Yeah,
a self-titled from 77,
Right.
stuff like that. Yeah. So yeah, that's okay. Yeah. So
Cool.
I mean, you've got everything there.
Hey,
Everything.
Armando, quick question. For those of us who don't have anything by him and kind of interested, but I'm not sure I want to go full on box set here. Are there any that kind of stand out that you think are good starting places?
Tabernacle.
Okay.
It's fantastic. It's acoustic. Tabernacle. Yeah,
Okay.
it's acoustic guitar, but it also has some symphonic arrangements to it, and also choirs that come in that he uses. If you want, okay, Bob's gonna take off, guys. He's already seen me freak out. So he's looking at me going,
Cheers, Bob.
do I need to throw water on you, kind of a thing? So, but if you want, even to start with, even the latest one, this one, it's fantastic.
Yeah, that's really good.
It's
Or
got
even more, to be really accessible, Eli, the album Eli.
Yeah,
There's jazz, there's pop, and there's funk in that, and it's
exactly,
almost
yeah.
not progressive at all.
yeah, and Eli's in this collection.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
he's one of those guys. If you pick the wrong one, you might never. It's a bit like the Grateful Dead. I always say this
Yeah.
about Dead. If you pick the wrong one, you might never buy a second album by them.
And I'm always picking the wrong Grateful Dead.
Well, yeah. Hey, unless they've got a good support act in 1990, Jim. But
And Scott, I would
yeah.
say Profile
Or
is
Miles.
a great place to start. That most prog
Yeah.
fusion fans like that one the best. You
Yeah,
can't go wrong with that one, but there's a lot of other good ones too. There's just so much.
All right.
Yeah, the new one.
and obviously Focus, just to hear his guitar work
Oh,
with when he was still with T.S. from Tish Van Leer.
Yeah, and if you want acoustic, just him on acoustic guitar, Passion is the one to go for. It's beautiful. It's just and if it's possible to shred on acoustic guitar, he shreds on acoustic guitar.
He's a fast player. Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of the guys
yeah.
that's always on, even if he's not a mainstream name, he's always on the top 10 lists, of actual guitar magazines and things.
Yeah.
He's like guys like Bumblefoot and Buckethead would be years later, like much more famous to actual players than they are to the public.
Yeah, I saw an interview with Brian May in, I think it was 03, and Brian May said to the interviewer, "I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous because Jan Akkerman's here and I want to meet him, and I've always been a fan of his since the Focus days, and like he's just an amazing guitarist, and this is Brian May nervous about meeting Jan Akkerman, right? It's just like, whoa, I never even thought about
reading that
right?
interview, part like, who the hell is Jan Akkerman, right?
Well, at that point, yeah, it's like, okay, but no, this is a good gamble to take. My panic attack aside, I apologize. This set, for anyone that wants to basically go out of their comfort zone, is fantastic. You will not be disappointed at all.
So, Armando, one more question. These 26, you say, these were all original albums. None of these are like bonus material or anything.
There's an album. Well, no, some of them have bonus stuff. The album Pleasure Point from, I believe it's from 81. There's 6 tracks and 12 bonus tracks.
Gotcha.
But I think it was Scott. Were you not meaning more like, is it 26 actual real albums?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
It's not like 15 albums and then a bunch of live stuff.
Right. It sounds like what Armando is saying is there's some bonus material with some of the albums.
So it's 26 individual albums that you would have bought in the shop at the time. Yeah.
But in this set, you have some bonus stuff. But to me, like I said, Pleasure Point has 12 bonus tracks, and they could have fit on the album because and they're not. I mean, if you want, extended experimental tracks. They're there, like 11 minutes and change. He does an album with Tony Scott called Prism, from 77. Yeah, 77. And there's 4 tracks, and they're all like extended jams and almost improvisational. So he goes all over the map. He literally goes all over the map. And you will not, and I can't stress this enough, you will not be disappointed whatsoever. Right. So, I mean, just take a gamble. You never know.
Cool.
You never know. Cool. All right, Jamie.
All right. I went to a record show yesterday, and I went with some cash pocket because not everyone takes a card. Some guys there are cash only. Nobody charges tax, so you're kind of buying stuff under the table. But there's the record show I went to, and it's amazing because every time I go, you have a lot of the same vendors, and they're always in the same spot. So right here is the prog guy. I know exactly where to go for the prog guy. Next to him is the guy that has all the good shit, but sometimes it's overpriced and he doesn't budge. This old fart does not budge with his prices, but he normally has the shit I want. So I'm going to go through real quick what I got yesterday. I got, you don't see this that often in record stores. You would think you'd see it more often. Smoking OPs by Bob Seger. It was in near mint. The vinyl's in near mint, so I grabbed it. This is when he was a little bit more raucous, a little bit more R&B at times, and jammy.
I think that one's a cover album, though. I think
yeah.
There's a cover.
Bo Diddley is like 6 minutes long. It just jams out. They did have one guy did have a very nice copy of Back in '72 Bob Seger album. He wanted $70 for it. It's the only one I don't have because it's the one that's hardest to find. You can get a lot of his albums dirt cheap. Back in '72, it's going to cost you. So I passed. I'm missing one Gentle Giant album, the first one. So I saw this, a 2-in-1 with Acquiring the Taste in the first album.
Okay.
I have Acquiring the Taste on vinyl. I don't have it on CD. So I'm like, let me just get this. And there you go. Sometimes, if I saw this on Amazon, I go, no, I'm all right. But when it's in your hand and you're in the mood to buy shit, and that's the thing. All these vendors, they know you're there to spend money. They know you're in the mood to buy shit. So they knock things up about $4, $5, $10 extra dollars. The guy,
gratification.
The old fart had moving pictures for $39.99. Nothing special about it. And some dude was looking at it and goes, "You think this is a good price?" I said, "That is a $17 album max. Do not pay that." So then the prog guy in the back, I got the In the Core of the Crimson King movie. Nice. And I watched it this morning.
Cool.
It's pretty amazing. If there's one thing I got from this movie is that if I was a very good guitar player, drummer, whatever, and somebody said, "Do you want to be in King Crimson?" my answer would be no.
100%.
I'm good.
I would agree.
I'm good. That band is based on fear. Fear of screwing up, fear of pissing off Robert Fripp, and fear of getting fired.
Exactly.
But the pressure on that band, because concert of all time, King Crimson, right? King Crimson show. So if you would go see them tomorrow, you would kind of expect it to be one of the best shows you've ever seen in your life. That's a lot of pressure night after night after night on Robert Fripp. And I'm sure he feels the pressure and then passes the pressure on to everyone else.
Yeah.
So, no, I got enough anxiety in my life. I should be having anxiety attacks on camera too, the amount of anxiety I have over the last few years. I wouldn't need that extra anxiety. But I tell you what, I was watching the movie this morning and I busted out my phone for a half second. And I kind of felt like Robert Fripp was going to stop in the movie, look at me and point and say, "Put down your fucking phone."
Well, yeah.
I kind of like, let me just in case, I ain't going to look at it.
And I mentioned that when I put it up on, I think I did have it on December when I just rattled through kind of end of the year things. It's also got the best nun who's ever appeared in a documentary ever.
Yeah, right.
There's none who happens to be a diehard Crimson fan. Yeah, you can't explain her. You need to experience her.
She looks like a nun too. You're not getting
Yeah.
like some cool hip nun. She is
But
very nunny.
it's also a very sad film for, don't want to spoil, sounds felt silly for a documentary, but there's with the idea of
Oh yeah.
time passing and death and things, there's that kind of permutates.
The one unsettling point for me was when that guy, the one musician, passed away.
Well, there is the spoiler. Okay.
Kind of well, spoiler alert. But that was the unsettling part for me. That's all.
So I
Thanks,
think you guys are
Armando.
going to dive into it on the prog seat.
I think I'm the only one here who hadn't seen it yet.
Well, I mean, everybody knows
Sorry.
he's no longer with us, so it's
It wasn't the most
Sorry.
famous guy, though. It's not like
Yeah. But yeah, they chose to make it a major part of like half of the film, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I found.
and it,
I mean, I don't want to get to the whole review of it here, but I found the whole documentary fascinating, but at the same time I was expecting more of a career retrospective of the band, and it really isn't.
I'm glad it wasn't.
Well,
because
it kind of
Crimson are
does
never
in a way.
Crimson are never giving you what you want. So why would a documentary give you? I would
Yeah,
hate to
that's
see
true.
the most. It's like I said about Bohemian Rhapsody, that biopic of Freddie. How dare they make a film about Freddie Mercury that is so straight and boring and just A to Z? It needed to be flamboyant, over the top, and all over the place, and it wasn't. The Rocket Man was. That's how you do a biopic of Elton John. But Bohemian Rhapsody was not. And that documentary is how you make a documentary about Fripp and Crimson, because it shows you the odd side, the weird side, the fun side, and the kind of military side, almost like Jamie referenced. He is like a little Napoleon. But hey, then you watch his videos with his wife on a Sunday, and you're like, "How's this the same guy?"
I know, right?
What?
He's frightening in this movie. You know what? I added
He's
it to
able to
my
separate
collection.
the worlds, his home life and his
Yeah.
work life.
He says it in the film.
Successfully.
It is an industry, so you have to have a strategy the same as any business would. So why would you just sit and get stoned and jam out? It needs to be done with a structure. Yeah, I'd imagine a psychiatrist would have a field day with Robert Fripp.
Yeah, for sure.
And I also got Sounds Like This, which I've been wanting for a long time, Nectar,
Oh, nice.
which is like a live album in the studio. But here's the thing. So I've had a downloaded copy for a long time. It's not very progressive. It's like a jam band album. It's very jammy, great guitar work. But here's the thing. So I'm listening to it yesterday. I'm like, let me bust out my phone and just make a couple quick notes so I remember, the thoughts I'm having now as I listen to it. And did you ever have a key that was floating around in your head and a lock that was floating on the other side of your brain, and then they just kind of matched up, poof, and something happened? So I'm making notes. I'm like, God, this sounds like a Fish album. It kind of sounds like the Fish album, Picture of Nectar. Oh my God, is that how they got that name? This is a picture, kind of like of nectar. I'm like, oh my God. I wonder if I just stumbled across something. I felt like I was in like Da Vinci Code and just figured something out. Probably not. But
the prog rock Da Vinci Code. I need to see that
movie.
movie.
So, yeah.
That's
then I got some more expensive shit. I'll do that in the second round.
Okay, cool. Scott.
Hey. Very good, sir.
Sure, Scott was at Waterloo Records at some point over the last couple of weeks. Right?
You think?
I saw that.
No, you're more synonymous with Waterloo than Napoleon, you.
Maybe so. Well, one of the genres of music that I've seem to be adding the most to my collection as of late is progressive rock, aka prog, as we say on the channel. I've dug a lot of the big names for quite some time, since the 80s, Floyd, Genesis, Yes, Tull, Rush, etc. But I would say just since I've started watching the channel, I've been listening to a lot more, adding to my prog, including King Crimson, Camel, Gentle Giant, Porcupine Tree, several others. But there's one particular band that gets discussed a lot on the channel, and I've been meaning to give them a listen. And I think if you follow me on Facebook, on Jamie's group, you'll probably know what I'm going to talk about here. Just haven't got around to these guys yet, but there always seem to be something ahead of them on the list. You have a little list that you go by, things I want to get, and well, I'll get to them eventually. Well, about a week ago, when I'm making my weekly visit to Waterloo Records, I found 6 titles by Marillion in the UCD section. And not only were the prices good, $5.99 to $7.99, seemed like the right time to buy. And like I said, been hearing Pete and all the proggers on the channel talking this band up for a while. So I thought, okay, good time to take a chance. I'll probably never find a bunch of them like that all in one place again. So time to move on it. And what I got was Clutching at Straws.
10.
Got Season's End.
7 out of 10.
Got let's see, Holidays in Eden.
6.
You got a lot of post fish, I see.
Brave.
9.
Yeah, the initial batch I got, most of them were after fish except for Clutching at Straws. And you got Afraid of the Sunlight.
8.
And they also had the most recent one.
10.
An hour before it started. So anyone that knows this band knows there are 2 distinct eras. First, the early years with Fish on vocals, and second, everything after that era that's got Stephen Hogarth on vocals. And after listening to these, I decided I probably preferred the One Fish album, Clutching at Straws. And I listened to all of them, obviously, but I haven't really dove into the bonus stuff just yet. I figured, okay, let's just concentrate on the original albums. Seems like something you should listen to later. But anyway, after listening to these, I decided, okay, I want to get more Fish, and I managed to find Fugazi and Misplaced Childhood from the same Discog seller, and it's also the bonus disc versions.
Yeah, those are good.
From
1999
remasters. So I ordered those, and been taking those in. I just got them yesterday, so I haven't had much time to really fully take them in. Liking them both. I think I prefer Misplaced Childhood out of these. Davey, you were asking me on the other day about Fugazi. I find that one maybe a little overproduced. It's got kind of an 80s production on it, I think.
It's always been the least popular of the Fish era.
And I'm not saying I don't like it. And
really
I do like it.
Yeah, and that's out of a very small sample, of course, because there is only 4, so it's not
right. And a lot of these, it's just this is my first impressions hearing them one time, basically. Yeah. So I got a ways to go as far as really taking these in and absorbing them. It's definitely a strong Peter Gabriel, Steve Hackett era Genesis influence from that period, not only from Fish's vocals, but everything about it, the way they use guitar, keyboards, the whole approach of the band. Beautiful, powerful, majestic, epic kind of music. Genesis of the 80s was essentially a pop band at that point. So, why shouldn't somebody pick up that prog baton and run with it, right?
Yeah.
And that's what they did. And then we come to the Hogarth era. I think he's a great singer in his own right, very different from Fish.
Yeah.
And I'd say he tends to be a little more understated in his approach than Fish is. Of the recent, the 8 that I got here, 5 were with Hogarth, and obviously most of the catalog is Hogarth. The one I'm gravitating the most from the Hogarth era is Brave. And seems like one, and maybe this is the way the Hogarth era tends to be, but it seems like something that's meant to be listened in one sitting in its entirety. And I'm okay with that. It's probably the kind of album I'll need to be in the mood to hear. But like I said, I suspect that may be the case with many of the Hogarth albums. Would you guys say that's probably accurate?
Not really. When they move, there's this period where they turn, like the Marillion.com era, they turn almost pop-like in a lot of places, and they start to do very Radioheady like tracks where they kind of drop the whole concept thing and start to be, it's kind of their midlife crisis era from about 97 to 2003.
Gotcha.
And then Marbles comes out and kind of picks the steam back up again. But there's this kind of weird period in the middle there that they started becoming, I swear, people back me up here. They started to do a couple of tracks that are like Beach Boys style. And it's like, what the hell is this?
Wow.
It's like just on Marillion.com, it's like almost pop.
That's a terrible
songs.
album, by the way.
Yeah, they start. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Again,
I'm guessing there's probably some ahead that I don't know that I might not like as much. But so far, I'm liking everything I'm hearing. I watched the Ranking the Album show that Pete did with Stephen Reed from 3 years ago, and turns out, the two I ended up liking the most, Clutching at Straws, which was Pete's number one, and from the Fish era, and Brave, which was Steven's number one, and that's from the Hogarth era. And I had decided those were my two favorites, at least so far, even before I'd watched the video. So it's kind of interesting that it turned out that way. It was your number ones. When Marillion hit the scene back in the 80s, they definitely weren't on my radar. I was more in a post-punk alternative kind of thing at the time. So there was a lot less crossover between fans of those two genres back then. If you liked your punk and alternative, you weren't gonna, you were supposed to hate prog. I mean, I'm not saying I hated it, but I would definitely say I ignored them. I do remember the song Kaylee, though. David and I had a discussion about that.
The song I always get mixed up with the Mr. Kaylee. Is that the
I definitely.
I always get them.
Yeah, it is a very poppy song, at least for them. It's a good song. I remember liking it at the time, but it kind of came and went. They never really got a whole lot of radio play in the States. I mean,
that was such a massive song here that Fish will tell the story frequently. It does love telling his stories. That was never a name, Kaylee. That was never a name here. And then his girlfriend was Kay Lee. That was her name, just Kay Lee. And he thought, well, that would be a bit obvious. So he just combined it and made Kaylee. And then he says for the next 30, till this day, he's got women coming up who are about my age, because that came out the year I was born, saying I was named after that song, and they're all obviously called Kaylee. Which is quite weird, because it's not a very happy song about the relationship. But these people,
when you break it down, I remember thinking the guy. I didn't think he was saying Kaylee. At first I thought he was saying Kennedy, like John F. Kennedy.
I'm so sorry that I hurt
you. Anyway, pretty much taking these albums in as I listen, and I'm sure my opinion on each of these albums is going to change as I become more familiar with them. I'll probably eventually I'll end up adding more titles. First and foremost, obviously, I'm going to get the first one, Script for a Chester's Cheered. I'll probably get that next month on Discogs.
That's a good one.
I kind of
Scott, the one thing I will say, you said you're not doing the bonus discs until you get, do the catalog.
I want to get a little more familiar,
Break the rule for that one. You want to listen to the Market Square Heroes EP along with the catalog. Okay. Yeah, but that is as central to their story as any of those four albums.
Very cool. I'll remember that.
Yeah, the Market Square Heroes EP.
But yeah, I definitely want to get the double reissue on that, no question. It's good to know they're still putting out good albums too. I noticed that Davey and Pete, and I know Davey has a very personal connection with this one. See this on a lot of people's best of 22 lists.
Yep.
And so it's good to know that they're still putting out good material. Pete, I noticed on the ranking show, you at the end of that, or I guess when you and Stephen were talking, you said you really weren't into the more recent stuff. Oh, that was before this came out.
Yeah, that was
3 years ago.
I've since changed my tune a bit.
Yeah,
because I got really turned off by them in like the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, they don't call me it exactly. Yeah,
and then their last couple albums have brought me back into the fold.
Yeah,
we haven't even talked about it here, but once you start really getting in, now that you're just getting into the band for the first time, They also have these great deluxe box sets that made by the same company that's doing the Jethro Tull.
I've seen the box sets. Yeah. I don't
Mhm.
know if you can see that, but yeah, I mean, it spells out, it's supposed to spell out Marillion, but right now it's just spelling out Aurelian.
Aurelian.
So
You'll get there.
I got to get that. Yeah. It has to be the double.
Yep.
So anyway,
Cool.
that's my number one. No, my first pick.
Right. All right. I'll try to make my brief because I know we're running long already.
Yeah, we have.
I have never, until about like maybe a month ago, I have never heard of this band ever. And I think I'm pretty hip to a lot of like the late 60s, early mid 70s, like proto hard rock metal bands, right, from the UK. But I never heard of these guys before until Ken Golden one day sends me a message and he goes, "Are you familiar with Hard Meat?" And I'm like,
I'm not answering that question.
I'm like, that's
Very pointed question.
Question, Ken. He goes, no, I mean the band. I'm like, ooh, thank God. And I'm like, no, I never heard of the band. He goes, British band. They got this new box set out. Maybe you'd be interested. So I was like, all right, let me go investigate. So I went and listened to some stuff, and I'm like, I think I would be interested in that. So here we have Hard Meat, worst band name ever. I agree. It's called The Space Between, the recordings 1969 to 1970. So this is from Esoteric Recordings, who do a fine job of reissues and remasters and things like that. So this was a British band that literally were around for about a year and a half, and that was it. They recorded 2 albums for a major label. They also had an album that they recorded initially but never officially released. So with this box set, you get all 3 of them. So it's got the cool, clamshell doohickey thing here, and then inside the box set you get a very cool booklet, which basically, and they were a trio, they were a power trio. Interestingly enough, they were called kind of like proto-prog, I don't want to say proto metal because there's really nothing metal on here, but I find the music of these albums like not particularly progressive and not particularly heavy, but it's pretty damn interesting. It kind of like falls in line, like Dave, you probably Edgar Broughton band, right?
Yeah, Edgar Broughton band, yeah.
Stuff like that. That's
Back
kind
to
of
the
what
egg.
it's like. There's some acoustic stuff. There's stuff that has some like bluesy rock things. There's some Hammond organ and piano on some of the tracks. The vocals are good. The guitar playing is really good. So you get the original album, which is just called Hard Meat, and that comes in like a gatefold thing, and there's guys in the band. That's pretty cool. Then you've got Through a Window, which I think has a fascinating album cover. And there are one of the guys in the back with the cute little dog. This album is a little bit more acoustic-y in nature. There's still some rock stuff on there, but it's a little mellower than the first album. And the first album is really eclectic because it goes from like, it jumps styles like all over the place. And then you've got the unreleased album, which is just called the unreleased album. And this was, again, 9 tracks recorded before they recorded the first album and actually released that. This is good. It's kind of all over the map too, but it's kind of bluesy, kind of jazzy, kind of folky, kind of heavy, kind of proggy, but not full bore into anything. So if you like this sort of like these weird little oddities from the UK from this time period, you're going to want to have this. It's quality. I will just say to anybody watching, don't expect full on prog, don't expect full on heavy stuff, but it kind of sits there a little bit. But if you like some of the more obscure stuff that was coming out from the UK around this time period, I think you're going to want to have it. So Hard Meat, The Space Between is what it's called. So, and you can get this at lasercd.com or any that's available on Amazon. Esoteric stuff is available. You can order directly from them as well. So worth seeking out for those of you who like the obscure stuff from this time period. Back to Davey.
And well, I'll be reasonably quick as well because we did go quite long on round 1. Yeah, I also tend to do those great clamshell box sets. So my pick is an Esoteric clamshell box set. It is came out a couple of months ago. Life on the Road, on air, 1972 to 1983 by Man. Now, Man, if people need an introduction to Man, first of all, there's no way you could possibly do them justice. But roughly speaking, a Welsh version of the Grateful Dead, but with a bit more humour, kind of covers it. They would have, there's a lot of jamming. There's a lot of slightly progressive tendencies, but never full prog. You know, it's got that kind of, right, we're progressing, but we're not doing, put it this way, there's not, you're never going to confuse them with Genesis. They always stay much more in the realm of the guitar jam band thing, but still kind of progressing with that. They are, like the Dead as well, also one of the bands who their live albums are almost well, usually their discography will just list them alongside the studio records because their live albums were more popular at the time. So Live at the Paget Rooms, Live at the Patty at Christmas. A really famous one in the UK is the Greasy Truckers Party, where they
Great
do a
album.
disc. Yes, phenomenal stuff. And Brinsley Schwartz do a set as well. And Brinsley Schwartz I mentioned because that's kind of what separates them from just being, well, come on, I'd rather listen to the Grateful Dead. They also have pub rock influences as well. So they have this sense of fun that you won't ever get in a Grateful Dead show. Like Jamie would just be sitting staring, going,
Sitting.
Man have a much more bizarre tendency. They will go to some strange places, so they can incorporate humor into it a lot more. So this set itself is BBC recordings, as the on-air suggests, and it's right through from 72, which is kind of about at their peak. You're talking about the time of probably their best studio record, Rhinos and Lunatics, or Do You Like It Here, Are You Settling In? And it goes right the way through to 1983, which is when Deke Leonard, who's always been my favourite member, returns to the band and they do the Kin reunion. So you have 3 CDs here that are from the Old Grey Whistle Test, Radio 1 John Peel sessions, which is just synonymous with great music, Bob Harris sessions, who was the host of the Whistle Test on TV, Radio 1 Live in Concert. And then, some of the tracks like Bananas and Spunk Rock, the tracks would be maybe 5 minutes on record, but they could be 25 minutes when you get a live version. It might look as if, for example, CD one is shortchanging you by having 4 tracks, but it's still 75 minutes worth of music. It's one of those kind of deals. And you get Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. They had just done a joint tour with John Cipollina and Quicksilver, and John actually stayed on and recorded with them for quite a while. He actually enjoyed being with them more than Quicksilver, so he kind of became a temporary member of the band for a while, which was quite cool. Although I don't think the Welsh climate was for him, so he didn't stick around too long. But then what's really cool about this set is you get 2 DVDs, not just one. You get 2 DVDs, which are absolutely packed. You get again, it looks as though on paper, if I just held it up and went, it's just that little bit there, it looks as if I'm probably pointing about 7 tracks. But it's actually, again, really long versions of all these songs. So you'll get a 15-minute version of Many Are Called But Few Get Up from the Whistle Test, Day and Night. You get, and how bizarre is this? A documentary that was made for BBC Schools. So back in the day, this was a band that were considered, school children can learn from a band like that. Imagine that these days. Yeah. Smoking dope with Man, and literally they're sitting there smoking, and it was produced for school, so it was long thought lost. They found it and they've included it on this, a documentary, which is also kind of good behind the scenes making of their album by proxy. That's not what they were actually making, but it's the contemporary 73 documentary that's included here. Again, more stuff in the Whistle Test, more stuff with a full concert farewell at the Roundhouse in 1976. Where they do a couple of cool covers on there as well, but then they do like Born with a Future, which is one of their 75, 76. They had a great run of a couple of albums with the Welsh Connection and Born in the Future, where they kind of said, right, that's it, we can't do any more than this. Goodbye, everybody. 8 years later, the money ran out and they all reunited. But so this kind of picks up with the original run through to the breakup, and then gives you one concert from the We're Back and We're Better Than Ever. And they actually haven't stopped. Man still go, even though Deke Leonard since passed. They still release things under various spin-off names, Son of Man, for example. You know, if you look up their discography, it's one of those ones you go, Jesus Christ, where do I start with that? They might have 15 actual albums, but easily 100 live recordings, easily. because they have one of those fan bases who, a bit like Edgar Broughton, funnily enough, will buy anything that they release. So it doesn't matter if it's really bad bootleg sounding quality, they will just buy man. So if people do not know them, BBC sessions are a good place to start, actually. But if you don't, then have a listen to Rhinos, Winos and Lunatics, Back to the Future, or Welsh Connection. Do you like it here? Are you settling in? Or just check out the tracks like Bananas and Spunk Rock, and you have I think that will tell you if you like them or not. But I think quite a lot of SLT viewers would actually really get into Man.
I think so too. Yeah, well, I've actually had tons of people asking, like, when are you going to do a show on Man at some point? I'm like, probably could. I think I have most of their stuff, but yeah, like Davey said, they got so much live material. It's crazy.
So, yeah, doing the studio rankings wouldn't tell the story.
Yeah, you're probably right. That's a nice little collection right there. Yeah, nice. All right, Armando, back to you.
Okay, for my last pick, my picks this month, one was a pick where, with Jan Akkerman, I had no idea what to expect. Hadn't even heard his stuff. So it was a pleasant surprise, brand new venture for me musically. The second pick is an artist that I've known of, but never really paid attention. And God forgive me, I am sorry that I didn't pay more attention to them. And I am talking about Tom Petty. Now, what I have here, and I want to thank Rick Labonte for this recommendation. This is the documentary Running Down a Dream from 2007, directed by the late Peter Bogdanovich. Right. What you have here, gentlemen, is the deluxe edition. You have the 4-hour director's cut of the movie. And you also have a bonus concert that he did in Gainesville, Florida, September of 2006, which features Stevie Nicks on 3 tracks. She comes out and sings with him. This documentary, for me, how can I put this? It's textbook, in my opinion, as to how a documentary is to be done. It goes from the beginnings when he started, with the band, the Epics. Then they changed the name to Mud Crutch. Can never say that name. I always say Mud Crunch.
Weird names.
And then, the record company wanted to have him be more upfront. So they wanted to have his name, change it to Tom Petty and something. So he came up with the Heartbreakers. And it just basically goes through how he basically he and the band, he always thought of them as a band. He never really wanted to be out front, his name out front, but he followed what the record company, at first he signed a Shelter. He signed a production deal with Denny Cordell, right? Who owned a studio and signed him to a production deal and recording deal. And from Shelter, his contract was sold to MCA Records. The story basically the documentary goes through all of his trials and tribulations, like his fight with MCA Records, how Denny Cordell sold his publishing and contract to MCA without telling him, and they got into a fight over that. Then he had to fight over, he took MCA to court over his publishing, and in the fallout from that, and how he basically took them on and said, I'm not, one quote, I don't want to, and I hate to quote WKRP in Cincinnati. I hate doing this, but the one quote, he was fighting with MCA, and basically they said, look, kid, around here, we crack the whip, you take the trip, right? And he said to them, I would rather sell peanuts on the corner than give you all of my publishing. I'm not doing it. So they relented. MCA backed down. So he took them on and he basically won. And it goes through all of the trials and tribulations about, his family situation when he was a victim of the arson at his home, his relationship with his father, which it's documented in the documentary that it was quite abusive, and that he basically said that his father only gave him credit as a human being once he became famous.
Mm.
Right, so he just sort of broke off from him, wanted nothing to do with him. I was talking to, I had a video chat with Vince Leroy, SOT fan, and I was telling him about this documentary. I started tearing up in discussing it because I thought, what the hell have I been missing all these years? Not listening to his catalog. I mean, I knew of the hits, but I realized I've missed out on a great catalog of music. I mean, and for me, what got me in the beginning, what turned me off in the beginning was his voice in the beginning, like the songs like Refugee and stuff like that. But once you get past it, I mean, I'm sorry, I know you love Dylan, Davey. I can't get past Dylan. I'm sorry. Dylan for me is pulling out fingernails. I can't, his voice.
There were a lot of comparisons between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But once I got used to
Tom Petty loved him. That's the most important part.
Once I got used to listening to his voice and got to realize what an accomplished musician and prolific writer he was. And there were comical moments too in that they were on their first tour. I think they had released You're Gonna Get It in 77, and they were on tour in Germany, and they were going through customs. Well, somebody had a bag of hash,
of course,
in their luggage, and all of a sudden they get through customs, and all of a sudden the bass player Ron Blair is like smiling they get through, they're in the car, and he's smiling, and his teeth are black. He basically, spoiler alert,
someone had a snack.
He had a snack,
Man.
Okay, in order to get through customs. And Petty's like saying to Peter Bogdanovich is doing the interviewing during the documentary. And he's like, can you just imagine what he had to go through that, to get past that, the digestion of the the heroin or whatever. So it's hilarious. It's hilarious. There was another quick moment where he's producing Roger McGuinn's album, and they're having an argument in the recording studio with the record company rep, because they wanted McGuinn to record a song, basically a pop song. And Petty turns to the A&R guy. He's like, "What are you doing here? Like, why are you even here?" "Well, we want him to do this, and we feel that this is the best route to go. We want him to, get to an audience that, more appealing audience, kind of a thing." And he's like, "Look, this is a great man here." He says, and he's looking at the song, and he's like, "I could smoke a joint and write a better track than this in like 10 minutes. Like, this is ridiculous," right? He ended up winning the argument. And Roger McGuinn is like, well, maybe we should just do what they say. He's like, "No, you're not doing that. Forget it." Like,
Very easy for Tom Petty to say that when he's got a lot more money than Roger McGuinn.
Exactly. So he ended up
That's
winning
his
the
hero,
argument.
right? So yeah.
But I mean, it's moments like that in the movie that really, really got me. I'm like, what the hell have I been missing here? Like, and yes, for anyone out there who's interested, I've started collecting. So I've started buying all the catalog, because I didn't want to get a box set that somebody from MCA or Warner's said, "We think you should hear these particular tracks," like cherry picked. I want to hear the catalog from start to finish. And I have, trying to track it down for a decent price was challenging, but I managed to get them for like, $9 each, $13 each. So it's not too bad. And I'm waiting for a Highway Companion to arrive today. So, I mean,
I would say Armando, don't miss out on the 2 Mudcrutch albums.
Yeah,
And when I
the
first heard
reunion.
them, I was nuts
I've been
about them,
looking, I've
but
been
man,
looking
they
for
grew
those.
on me really quickly.
Yeah.
I found the one. I found the first one, for $14, whatever. But I found the next one was like $45 or $55.
Wow.
Right? So on Amazon. So, but this again, this movie is textbook in how a documentary should be done. And I would put this, I'm as much of a Queen fan as I am, and I'll be a Queen fan till the day I go. This trumps any Queen documentary I've ever seen in my life. And I'm going to get emotional. I don't want to, but this movie is it for me in terms of documentaries. You will not get anything better than this in terms of emotion, realism, conveyance of passion for the music. You will not get anything better than this, in my humble opinion. So guys, and I found this, and again, thank you, Rick, for the recommendation, because I watched the ranking that you guys did. I got this for like $23. This is a 4-disc version. You get the movies across 2 DVDs. The concert, that's 4 hours. The concert itself is another 2 hours, and another bonus CD soundtrack of stuff that wasn't done in the concert. So you get your money's worth for this. Even if you have to pay $50, get this. You will not go wrong with that. I swear to God. So
I just bought that one in the last few months. When we were, actually, it was when I was preparing to do the Tom Petty ranking show, and I watched that. I keep waiting for the time where 2 of us are going to have the same pick.
Yeah,
for one of these things, because I was thinking about presenting that, but I chose not to.
I had another one picked, and then I thought, no, and I even made notes for the first one I picked. And I thought, no, you know what? The Tom Petty needs to, in my opinion, needed to be spoken about. Like it needed
It's
to be.
great.
Does anybody know if that's been released on Blu-ray?
No, it hasn't.
No,
No.
No,
I refuse to buy anything new on DVD anymore.
I know.
I hear you.
And that
I'd rather
DVD
stream
set,
it.
that DVD set, I was still working in the record store when it came out, and that was the one that everybody bought. Nobody bought the standard edition DVD that came out because the price difference was so negligible.
Right.
It was like for an extra $10, you get 3 more discs, including a live concert.
Yeah.
Like no brainer.
and in terms of the concert, you get a good. It goes up to
It came out in what, 2006?
Yeah. So it goes up from up to 2006 in terms of his catalog. Not a lot of flash and dash in terms of production, in terms of lights and smoke bombs. It's just him.
You don't want that with Tom Petty.
With the band, and it's got. I would be remiss if I didn't say this. Mike Campbell is an unsung hero.
Yeah.
His prowess and his guitar technique, unbelievable.
To play any style.
Yeah. And you can just look, they're on stage, and you can just look at them, and you can tell that they honestly respect one another, and in terms of their craftsmanship. And at this point, I mean, there was even one point in the movie where Stan Lynch wasn't liking what he was doing, what Petty was doing musically, right? So I mean, you're going through all these changes and stuff, like with record companies and stuff. And even the band members are saying to you, I don't like what you're writing, right? And there was one point where Stan Lynch didn't want to come in for a recording session, didn't want to come in to record drums. So Petty, he has his limits. He said to the management, you tell him Ringo is ready to come in and play drums. He was in that studio within the next 2 hours. Because he didn't want to get shown up, right? But then at one point he just says, I've done it, I've had it with Lynch. I can't do it anymore. I can't. Like he was too volatile for him in order and unpredictable to want to work with him anymore. So it's, again, textbook. So you guys really need to invest in this and enjoy it, savor it.
Cool. Before we move on to Jamie, because I don't have it and I've seen it and it's sitting in my cart. The Wildflowers Deluxe set, is that like worth getting? I mean, I have the regular one.
I have it. I have the deluxe set.
It's not worth
How
getting,
many?
maybe?
Like
No,
the one disc
unless you're a
one?
massive fan of the records. It's just is a textbook example of what we're seeing these days. For session things and then a live from the era where you think, yeah, but that wasn't his best album. Come on, like, you know.
Well,
Yeah.
that's up to opinion, right? I mean, I would get
There are
it.
people
Well,
that
yeah,
think
but that's
Wildflowers
that's-
is his best.
again, that's the point. If you do think it is, then it is worth it. So, Pete, if you think it is, you're one of your favorites.
I got the
Then
double
yeah.
disc recently with just one.
Exactly.
got
So, do you
$5.
need the one disc, then the two
That's pretty-
discs? then
Yeah,
the
I found a
box?
one disc of the alternative versions, and that's pretty good.
And then that's not enough because you have to buy the deluxe Fillmore box set that came out last year as well. You know,
Well, I stayed away from the Fillmore set because of Pete's review. I'm like, okay, you're like, oh,
It's really good, but I mean, the thing is, there's so many cover songs on it. It's like, but it's fun.
that's
Yeah.
just
It's like
it,
a
right?
party. It's like
yeah.
listening to a
Yeah,
party.
that's exactly
Yeah,
what it is.
it's a
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
of fun.
but that came out in one of those ridiculous box sets that what do they call them now? Uber Deluxe, where there's like the super deluxe, and then there's one that's meant for the people with way too much money. It was like $700, and it came in like a drum cymbal sleeve thing. What the hell's going on there? What is that? It's like the George Harrison All Things Must Pass Uber Deluxe that came in a wooden crate made from one of the trees from George's garden.
Well, that's ridiculous. I'm sorry.
What the
Okay.
fuck?
Crazy.
So
And
they
it's
say.
$2,000 or something, you know? Like, what are you going to sit there and look at your box and go, oh, George might have seen that tree once?
I do believe on the Wildflower set there is one disc of home recordings of demos of the album. So if you want to get into that,
Yeah, I mean, I've heard all sorts of opinions on the album. It's like, I've read like, if you love the album, you have to have it because it gives you the whole story. And I really like Wildflowers. It's not one of my favorites by him, but I know people, to a lot of people.
and also
there you
just
go.
very quickly, there is a YouTube only documentary on the making of Wildflowers. There were they talked to Rick Rubin and Ben Montench and Mike Campbell about the recording of the album and what went into it and his daughters and stuff. It's only on YouTube, so if you want to even check that out, even before getting that, like the set, check that out. I thought it was fantastic. It was a very pleasant surprise.
Anyway, I didn't mean to derail the whole conversation, but anyway,
No,
Jake,
Oh,
after
quite
this
a
episode,
few. Yeah. Going to be some scissors out tonight for the tape.
All right, let me fly through these. On the quest for getting Kiss vinyl, that each one's kind of interesting.
that's right.
I got Dynasty, Japanese import with the Obi strip.
cool.
Dynasty.
It comes with the booklet where everything on the first page is in Japanese and the lyrics are in Japanese and English. So I tell you what, man, I don't know what they're doing in Japan, but everybody keeps care of their records. Whenever you see this Obi strip, it's always mint condition. I don't care if it's a 50-year-old record. So on my Let's Get Physical Facebook page, if you're not a member, go ahead and send me a request if you want to join, and I'll accept you. It's a fun place. I posted yesterday a blurred picture of a album I bought yesterday. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. This is the Mo-Fi pressing, the original master recording, that has that strip above.
What did say?
I don't know what they did to make these supposedly sound better. They recorded at half speed, or I don't know what they were doing back then. I have a few of these pictures of at an exhibition by ELP, Papanatar in the Heat of the Night, and Misfits by the Kinks. Do they sound better? Maybe. The Kinks one probably sounds the best out of the three. So Dark Side of the Moon goes for about $200 to $250 if you can find it in good condition. I would really like to just borrow a copy to hear it. Dave is not a big fan of these, I don't think. But I took a chance on a poor man's Dark Side of the Moon. I'm saying poor man's, but I don't think it is, but maybe some people would think that. So I took a chance and I put down a big chunk of change on Supertramp Crime of the Century. And I'll tell you what. So I put on my CD at the same time and I played this at the same time. So all I had to do was toggle between the two switches to hear the difference. I did it all for, well, what's the first song on here? School. Takes a minute for that to get going. So about 2 minutes in, there was no comparison. My CD sounded old and quiet. This, I listened to it. I swear to God, it was like listening to it for the first time. The best way I can put it is I always felt this, there's a pop sensibility. It's Supertramp. It's got that nerdy poppy thing going on, but there's an anger and a darkness that lies between that poppiness on that album.
Yeah, sure.
And what I felt on this version was it was bringing that anger up to the forefront a lot more. You could feel it, and it was shaking the floor. My floor downstairs doesn't shake too often when I listen to an album. So I was loving it. I think it was worth the money I spent on it.
Jimmy, just to quickly say though, the reason I did shave my head at MoFi is they were caught.
Yeah,
they had.
That's
they
recently
had been,
though.
It's the last 7 years at least. They have always prided themselves on this has come from the original analog masters.
Right.
And when it came out that they were doing Michael Jackson's Thriller, they said they're pressing 40,000, and it was pointed out, well, you can't do 40,000 from the original, from one tape. You can get 10,000 before you need to create a new stamper to be really geeky about it. So they had to come out and admit, yeah, we've actually been using digital sources for the last at least 7 years. So all
this came out in 1980 or something.
Oh, yeah, they've been going for 40
74.
years. But no, the MoFi version.
You mean the
yeah. So all these people
Master,
that have been sold albums at twice the price, buying it simply because it was analog masters, have been ripped off. They will admit to 7, although people are now saying that when they get the equalizers out and things, they can detect it way back as like 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
And that is out on Blu-ray audio as well, so you can hear a completely digital version of Crime of the Century, which you can compare to, and that sounds remarkable. So, it's just that they ripped off their audience by charging twice as much for not as advertised goods based on its analog when it never was.
Yeah, I was reading that yesterday. This I had on Blu-ray, the actual concert for a while, and I thought it was at a reasonable price. The 4-album live Soundgarden, what's it called? Live from the Artist's Den.
Yep.
Which is really cool. Nice big thick box. And I like how each album is shrink wrapped inside each one. So you got Chris Cornell on one. And Chris Cornell, I mean, the band sounds great. I listened to this and I'm like, I can't believe these guys got as big as they were, doing this weird doomy music. And it just caught on because they had just enough hits to put in the middle, like Black Hole Sun, Turn in My Hand, and then here's some weird shit, man. Got Kim Thayil, one of my favorite guitarists, Kim Thayil. I love his textures. I love the way he plays. Ben Shepherd on this one, Matt Cameron on this one, and no one appreciates this guy was the drummer for Soundgarden and Pearl Jam. In my book, that's like saying, yeah, in the 70s, I was a drummer for Deep Purple and Black Sabbath. That's quite the gig. Yeah. And while we're on the 90s, I love buying original 90s pressings just because they're rare. Who was buying albums in the 90s? When you walked into the record store, it was in the early 90s, cassettes and CDs. And then by the time the 90s were ending, it was all CDs. You never saw vinyl ever. So I saw this dude, I knocked him down $25. I said, dude, I got $100 left in my wallet. And I did. I said, will you take 100 for it? And I got Blood, Sugar, Sex, and Magic original UK pressing, David.
Yeah, well, I was about to say they made vinyl in the UK for a lot longer than the US.
Yeah, you didn't see it anywhere here. Yeah.
And I got to tell you what, I listened to it yesterday, and there's some oomph in it. There's some nice bottom end in this on the vinyl. A lot of times you buy 90s vinyl and you're just happy to have it because you're a fan and it's rare and yay, I got it. I got my Moby Dick whale. This actually sounded a lot better than the CD. It did. It was
Really?
pumping. It sounded really good. So you might be thinking, Laszlo, you went to this record fair. My God, how much did you spend on this crap? Well, I don't want to say it because my wife might be in the other room and she might hear me, but between you guys and everyone watching, now let me get off that off the
Good
screen.
Lord. Okay.
Meanwhile, tonight, Jamie will walk in the other room and there will be Grace sitting in front of the TV watching this episode, being like, "You what?"
She doesn't watch these episodes. She watches these episodes as often as your wife watches these
Which is
episodes.
none at all, right?
None at all.
Mine started watching them at the beginning, and I don't think she really watches them anymore.
Yeah, of course not.
There's and Pete and Jamie, you'll know about it from having channels. YouTube lets you break down your viewership into like age and gender. Yeah, let's put it this way: when you run a music or movie channel, you don't tend to have many female subscribers percentage
almost
wise.
zero.
Yeah.
I don't see I don't see Grace sitting through 10 minutes of us talking about man. Just don't see that. Holding her
My
attention.
anxiety attack.
No, not at all. Well, that's a good
Esoteric,
shopping
what the
spree
hell?
for you. That was a good. That was a day well worth spent, I think, yesterday, Jamie. Good.
Yes,
good
it's
stuff.
loads of fun when you go in there with too much money.
What
I
fun.
brought 300 in cash and then spent another 78 on the card.
There you go.
And you made the perfect point about it, Jamie. They know that you've got money burning a hole in your pocket. You know that you're there to buy things that you wouldn't normally
go.
They
buy
know
if you're
that you
sitting
know
on
why
Amazon. Yeah.
you
They've
can talk
seen
them
you
down
coming.
though. I
Yeah.
mean,
And so they
this
bump
was
it up, so you chop it
125.
down,
I
yeah.
said I'll give you 100. The Soundgarden was 45, which was, for 4 albums. I said
Yeah, that's
I'd
not
give
too bad.
40. You always talk them, except that old fart.
Yeah,
All
nobody
right.
goes to a record show to browse. I mean, you go there because you want to buy shit,
Yeah.
So, all right, Scott, what do you got? Your final pick of the day here.
I love the record shows. They have one coming to Austin in May, I believe. I always end up getting some bootlegs and some other stuff when I go to those. So this one, it's a follow-up to one of the ones I presented last month, and I don't normally present something by the same band or artist in consecutive months, but I'm going to make an exception. I'm going to break my rule because this just proves how strong the curse is, and B, it is that fucking good.
Not too
I'm
often
referring-
Scott drops an F-bomb, so it must
I
be.
know that's
Exactly.
Whoa.
Good Lord.
I'm referring to the complete Jack Johnson sessions. Miles
that
Davis.
is that fucking good. You're right. Yeah.
Yes. 5 CD box set made up of mostly outtakes,
Look at that.
never previously released material from the sessions that produced the Jack Johnson album. And I bought this through a Discogs seller about 3 weeks ago for $50. Not quite the steal that the Bitches Brew box was, but not too bad either. For me, money well spent. I definitely love it. Let me start by saying that this set rocks. It has some of the heaviest, funkiest music that Miles ever produced, and bringing that heavy funk with some of the greatest players on the planet. Of course, John McLaughlin on lead guitar, kicking ass, melting faces, Herbie Hancock, Chick Corea, and Keith Jarrett on keyboards, all at different places on the sessions, not all together. Sonny Sharrock also on guitar, Wayne Shorter and Steve Grossman on saxophones, Dave Holland, Ron Carter, and Mike Henderson on basses, and Jack DeJohnette and Billy Cobham on drums. And the set starts out strong on disc 1, and it just doesn't let up until the last note on disc 5. Most of the material in here had not been previously released, but a few tracks had appeared on other albums like Live Evil, Get Up With It, and Directions. And of course, you've got the 2 lengthy tracks that made up the original Jack Johnson album, Right Off and Yesternow. And unlike the Bitches Brew box set, the tracks from the original are on the back end of the set. rather than the front end like they were on the Bitches Brew set. My personal favorites are on pretty much on discs 1 and 2, although I love all of it. I think 2 probably could have stood as an album in its own right. Got some nice, nasty, tasty, funky grooves running through all 5 parts of Go Ahead, John. That is just such a great track. You've got some of Miles's fieriest and fiercest playing ever. Wild, beautiful, funky, heavy music. Closest I would say a jazz artist probably ever came to doing heavy metal. It's not metal, but it's heavy, definitely heavy. The jazz rock funk groove continues in full force on Duran. And at the end of take 4 of Duran, you can hear Miles saying, "That's some raunchy shit, man." Trademark raspy voice of his. And then in addition to those the influences Miles was taken in from Hendrix and James Brown, Sly and the Family Stone, etc. I'm hearing some early Funkadelic on here. Very similar to what was on Maggot Brain, which was also released in 1971.
Yeah, now I'm imagining Eddie Hazel and Miles Davis's band. That would be.
Yeah, I looked it up, and Jack Johnson came out in February, and I believe Maggot Brain came out in July. So I guess Miles, maybe they were influenced by Miles, but I think there's a little bit of back and forth going on, maybe. But couldn't help but notice that several of the songs on here were named after boxers. You got Duran, like Roberto Duran. You got Sugar Ray. It's Robinson, not Leonard. Ali, I think we know who that is. Archie Moore and Johnny Bratton. Those were some older boxers. And there's also a track called Willie Nelson. And I looked it up. Yes, it is the country singer. I don't know where he got the idea to name a song after Willie Nelson, but it's a kicking tune. I mean,
I think they just called it things on the tape boxes, and that's how it ended up happening.
Something like that.
Because that's why we ended up with sort of the John McLaughlin. And because there's 3 tracks that are just called either, as you said there, like "Let's Go John," John McLaughlin.
Well, yeah, I'm sure that's
literally
the
what
John
was
that's being referred to. Yeah,
that was literally what was just written on the tape boxes. So, and Miles was dead, so there's no one to ask. Like, what do you want to call this? You know,
and it's full of just great photos and biographies. You know,
it's a good set.
How cool
stuff from the sessions. I may actually be liking this just a little bit more than the Bitches Brew box, but it's also more fresh to my ears. I'm more familiar with the Bitches Brew box. So but you get some a lot of bang for your buck here.
I need to get
Pete, have you bought this yet?
I have not. I need to get it. I know. I'm sitting here listening to you talk about it. I'm like,
that is essential. And
it's my favorite Miles album, right? Yeah, so why I should do it.
And I think when I posted it on Jamie's group, you asked me, how many discs in that. I'm kind of like thinking, Pete doesn't have this, and then I'm thinking, well, maybe Pete will get it, and maybe he'll present it on the show. I was like, I keep worrying we're gonna have an episode where we're gonna have 2 people presenting the same thing.
Well, after watching this, I'm probably gonna go out and have to get it now. So job well done.
So next month I won't talk about Miles, I promise.
Hey, we could squeeze Miles into just about every episode. I don't think anybody would care.
Miles, Zappa, Neil, just those kind of guys we could do.
Frank,
well, there's just infinite.
Neil, Frank, and Miles, right?
Yeah. There's just so much in their catalogs. We could do. There's a lot of Bob Dylan too, but I don't know people would stand for that.
He only does one every few years in a bit like series.
It's The Voice. I can't take The Voice.
All right, it's actually kind of cool that Scott was talking about Miles and Fusion, I guess, because that's where I'm going to go with my final pick here. This is actually 2 discs I'm going to show, the 2 sets, I should say, and they're both by the same artist. And these 2 sets represent the first 6 albums he ever released as a leader for the CTI label. I'm talking about Joe Farrell, sax player. You may remember him. He played on the initial Return to Forever lineup from Chick Corea. So he has done a whole bunch of albums. which are now released on BGO Records. So you've got the first 3 on this one, which is the Joe Farrell Quartet, Outback, and Moon Germs. And then his next 3 albums, which are Penny Arcade, Upon This Rock, and Canned Funk. And again, all on BGO Records. Great place to get all of these. This first 6 albums. This is really good stuff. So I'm going to read you the lineups for these albums. And BGO does their excellent job of, giving you all the information.
Yeah, phenomenal.
Yeah, I love
and
BGO.
dirt cheap as well for what you get.
100%. Yep. So
unless they go out of print.
Yeah, exactly. Joe Farrell Quartet album.
Yep.
Joe Farrell on soprano and tenor sax, flute, and oboe. A guy named Chick Corea on acoustic electric piano. A guy named Dave Holland on bass. Maybe you've heard of this guy on drums, Jack DeJohnette, and on guitar, some bloke called John McLaughlin, right? So that's that album. Again, produced by Creed Taylor. This is all the CTI stuff. On Outback, you've got Joe, Elvin Jones on drums, Chick Corea's back once again, Buster Williams on bass, and Airto Moriera on percussion. And then for the Moon Germs album, you've got Joe, Herbie Hancock on piano, Stanley Clark on bass, and Jack DeJohnette on drums. Ooh. This is powerhouse stuff, people. I don't know why more people don't talk about these albums from Joe Farrell. All right, so let's move on to the next trio. And so for the Penny Arcade album, we've got Joe, Herbie Hancock, Steve Gadd on drums, Herb Bushier on bass, Joe Beck on guitar, and Don Elias on congas and percussion. Upon This Rock, we've got Joe Beck once again on guitar, Steve Gadd and Jim Madison on drums, Herb Bushler on bass, Herbie on piano, Don Elias on conga once again. And then the last album is basically almost the exact same lineup. Herb on bass, Joe on saxophone and flute, Jim Madison on drums, Joe Beck, the great Joe Beck, I might add, once again on guitar, and conga and percussion by Ray Mantilla on these. So this is just classic 70s fusion, saxophone led, but some great guitar work and keyboard work. I mean, Herbie and Chick add some nice layers on those albums, but they're not, they don't dominate the sound. This is truly ensemble stuff here. I mean, first of all, if you like classic 70s fusion, you got to hear the Joe Farrell Quartet album with, of course, that has McLaughlin and company on it. That is terrific. But all of these are really, really good. And if you love 70s fusion, you haven't checked out any of Joe Farrell stuff, these are the ones to get. Like I said, BGO Records, you get all 6 of them on 2 little collections here. Mandatory. And I got these from Ken Golden as well. So lasercd.com, Ken's got them in stock. They're really cheap. I don't even think they were $10 or $10, $11 max.
Really?
Yeah. Really, really cheap.
Right.
And Jamie, just so you know, I did not get rid of the
they always come in a nice little slip. Yeah.
The other one didn't come, but this one came with one, so I did save that.
Doing it right.
Do you know, I was counting while you read them out there, Pete. By my estimate, 11 of those session guys would go on to be band leaders in their own right.
Absolutely.
11.
Yep.
And all of them would be session work for the rest of the career, but 11 of them would have distinctively massive careers themselves. That's insane.
Yep. Good stuff. And all these are digitally remastered, all these albums. So wonderful collections, great 70s fusion. I highly recommend if you haven't checked any of these out. It's a great place to get all 6. Again, these are his first 6 albums out of the gate as a band leader. So well worth checking out. So there you have it.
Nice.
Another episode
that out.
The Curse of the Collector. So now everybody's going to be like, oh my God, I have so much stuff to buy, including myself, because now I'm going to be going checking out prices on that Jack Johnson box set because I got to have that. So there you go.
I saw some good prices. I think you'll be able to find
Yeah, I've seen it out there, and I just, for whatever reason, I just haven't pulled the trigger.
I think
It's one of those pain in the arse ones though, where they are missing 1 or 2 things that were on the Legacy 2-disc deluxe. You know,
They do that on purpose, so you have to buy the box
You
set.
have to get all of them, right? Got to collect them all, right? Yeah, that's the way it goes. So, all right, everybody. So thanks for joining us here on another episode of The Curse of the Collector. Lots of good stuff we discussed here today. So if everybody wants to hold up some of the things you got and, be on the lookout for any of these. We've given you clues on where to buy them all and stuff like that. But don't touch that dial because we'll be back once again in a month with more cool stuff that we have found out there in the wild. Till then, Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together. All
Occasionally, I was like all the damn
time.
time.
all the damn time. Occasionally, yes, that too,
Yeah.
right? So, for Scott Barry, Armando Venditti, Jamie Laszlo, and David Gallagher, I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you Tuesday night for the 100th episode of In the Prague Seat.
Oh,
Prague albums we
epic.
can't stand, the sequel, part 2. So that's coming up on
Yes.
Tuesday. Till then,
Even
have a good one, everybody.
yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.